Your college fund? Actually, I'm the one who used it. In the heavy atmosphere of the study, my stepsister Christina delivered those words with a triumphant smile. For a moment, I couldn't process what she meant. Her words echoed in my head again and again. I'm the one who used it. It sounded like nothing more than a cruel joke. That day became the decisive turning point between light and shadow in my life. It was supposed to be one of the brightest days of my future, my high school graduation. In my hands, I held my diploma adorned with a golden tassel that marked me as valedictorian, along with my acceptance letter from Stanford University. Thanks to the trust fund my late father Thomas had left for me, I believed, without a single doubt, that I could pursue my dream in computer science without worrying about tuition. After the ceremony, our backyard in sun-drenched California hosted a lavish graduation party. Colorful cocktails lined the poolside, while the lively laughter of my father's former business partners and my stepmother Kathy's glamorous friends filled the air. Congratulations, Wendy. Stanford, just like Thomas's daughter should. Thank you. I straightened my back and smiled proudly at my father's old friend. Though my father Thomas had passed away from illness when I was 15, his presence was still immense within me, and I was proud to be his daughter. The ticket to the future my father left for me. No words could ever capture how precious it was to me. Meanwhile, my stepsister Christina twirled in her designer dress, laughing loudly with her friends. Champagne glass in hand, she carried herself as though she were the star of the party. My stepmother Kathy watched her with satisfied eyes. After my father's death, she had taken over his company as successor, her authority becoming absolute. My father had remarried Kathy when I was still a child. She adored her own daughter Christina, but toward me, the stepchild with no blood ties, she always built walls, belittling me at every opportunity. When my father was alive, it was bearable. He was always on my side, shielding me whenever Kathy and Christina turned cold. He had been my only shield. But after his death, everything changed. The thin mask of kindness they had barely maintained in front of him was stripped away, and their hostility toward me grew stronger with each passing day. In that vast house, I was completely isolated. No matter how high my grades were, no praise ever came my way. Instead, I was constantly compared to Christina. Being book-smart means nothing if you have no charm, you'll never survive in society, followed by mockery and laughter. In that house, I was always second best, or rather, treated as worthless. Still, on this day, I tried to believe that the warped atmosphere of my family had been drowned out by the noise of the party. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. But in the middle of the chatter, I accidentally overheard my father's old friends. Even so, Kathy's management seems shaky. Back when Thomas was alive, he would never have touched such speculative ventures. Yeah, I've heard the company's performance hasn't been good lately. Even the business Thomas built looks uncertain now. Those whispered words unsettled me. The company. Struggling. And then it happened. Wendy, may I have a word? As the party reached its peak, my stepmother's quiet voice stopped me cold. Behind her, Christina stood with her arms crossed, eyes scanning me as though appraising my worth. There's something important we need to discuss. In the study. The coldness of her tone made the excitement that had been bubbling in my chest vanish instantly, like a tide receding. An ominous feeling brushed against my skin like a chilly summer breeze. Inside the study, my father's cherished mahogany desk stood as a silent witness. On the other side sat Kathy and Christina, side by side, like judges about to deliver a verdict. I lowered myself onto the stiff guest sofa as directed. Congratulations on your graduation, Wendy. I do recognize your hard work, Kathy began, though her eyes held no warmth. Now, let's get to the main issue. Your college. Stanford, you mean? I felt my voice tremble just slightly. And that's when Christina spoke. She declared she had used my college fund. What? Forcing my trembling voice out at last, I managed to speak, but Christina seemed to savor my confusion, continuing slowly, almost playfully. You know, don't you? I've always dreamed of launching my own fashion brand. I'm opening a boutique in one of the best locations in Los Angeles. That kind of startup capital costs a fortune. So, I decided to invest your college fund. Invest. The word came out of my throat as a dry, rasping sound. That money was what my father left for me, for my education, for my university. I know that. Christina sighed, exasperated, as though she were tired of explaining something obvious. That's why I'm saying it's an investment for the family. When my business succeeds, we'll all prosper. Of course, you'll benefit too, someday. But think about it. Which is more rational? You spending 4 years in college just studying, or me building a business that generates far greater wealth? I was struck dumb. Her reasoning was so self-centered, so merciless, it was beyond comprehension. With trembling lips, I turned to look at my stepmother. But Kathy met my eyes directly and, in a voice cold as ice, delivered the final blow. Wendy, face reality. In this family, who is truly worth investing in? It's Christina, with her talent for business and her ambition. I'm sorry, but I don't believe you deserve to control the kind of money your father left. Only Christina is worthy of such an investment. Her words pierced my chest like a sharp knife. It felt as though the world before my eyes had gone completely dark. At that moment, I was condemned as worthless within my own home. The chance for an education, the only hope my father had left me, my very future, had been stripped away with ease, sacrificed to my stepsister's ambition and my stepmother's selfish judgment. And yet, strangely, my mind grew calm. I drew a slow breath, kept my face perfectly composed, and said quietly, "Understood." Just one word. The sound echoed through the study, and for a brief instant, both Kathy and Christina exchanged glances. Their faces held not relief, but rather a trace of confusion, as though caught off guard. "You understand? You accept this, Wendy?" Kathy pressed, as if speaking to a stubborn child. "Yes. I understand perfectly." I nodded calmly. That my father's gift for my future will be surrendered for Christina's dream. That in this house, such a decision is considered rational. That I am deemed to have no value for investment. And most of all, that this is who you truly are. I deliberately swallowed the last words. Then, I rose slowly from the sofa. Their eyes followed me warily as I stood. "Just remember one thing," I said, fixing my gaze on them across my father's mahogany desk. I didn't know what color burned in my own eyes, only that something fierce glowed there. Every action carries consequences. No sooner had the words left my mouth than, knock, knock, came a firm rap at the heavy study door. "Madam, Diane has arrived," the housekeeper's voice announced. Kathy's brow twitched. "Diane? Why would mother-in-law come now?" Diane. That was the name of my late father Thomas's own mother, my paternal grandmother. Since his death, she had kept her distance, rarely setting foot in this house. Before Kathy could reply, the door opened quietly. Standing there was my grandmother Diane, dressed in a flawlessly tailored Chanel suit, radiating the dignity of a queen. Beside her stood an older gentleman with a fine leather briefcase, silent and composed. "Well, Mother, what brings you here so suddenly, in the middle of the party?" Kathy forced a smile as she scrambled to rise. But Diane raised a hand, halting her. "Stay seated, Kathy. I came here to speak with you both. Wendy, come here." At her invitation, I stepped to her side. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder, warm and steady. "This is Mr. Harrison, my legal counsel," my grandmother introduced. The gentleman gave us a polite nod, his sharp eyes briefly sweeping over Kathy and Christina. "A lawyer? What is the meaning of this?" Kathy's voice trembled, betraying the first hints of panic. Even Christina, who had been so confident just moments ago, now looked uneasy, her eyes fixed on her mother. "Wendy has told me everything," my grandmother said. At those words, both Kathy and Christina froze. "I'll be direct. The trust fund my son Thomas left for Wendy's college education, what is its status right now? Kathy's face stiffened under the blunt question. Of course, I've been managing it responsibly on Wendy's behalf, she replied. I see. Managing it. Then as part of that management, can you confirm whether large transfers were made from the trust to an account belonging to your daughter, Christina Brown, for her business venture? Attorney Harrison's calm voice cut through the room. At that moment, I could see the color drain instantly from both Kathy and Christina's faces. I don't know what you're talking about. Kathy shrieked, her voice edging toward hysteria. Unfazed, Attorney Harrison slid a document from his thick stack across the mahogany desk. Let's begin with this. It's a certified bank statement showing substantial funds transferred from Wendy's trust account into the corporate account of Miss Christina Brown's fashion brand. He paused, then placed another paper beside it, his gaze fixed on Kathy. And here is further proof, direct transfers from the same trust account into the operating account of your own company, Kathy. The business you run. At those words, Kathy drew in a sharp breath. And just so we are perfectly clear. Attorney Harrison added, spreading out yet another report. This is your company's latest financial statement. On fire would be an accurate description. To cover your failed management and finance Christina's dream, you plundered Wendy's future. That is the complete picture of what we've uncovered. From those documents, I realized my father's old friends had spoken the truth. The company really had failed. They weren't only sacrificing my future for Christina's dream, they were also plugging the holes of their own disaster with it. The papers laid out on the desk were undeniable evidence of their betrayal. Running your company into the ground with reckless management, then raiding your late husband's estate to cover the losses, that alone is reprehensible. But to also indulge your daughter's selfish fantasy at the same time? Outrageous. Diane's steady voice rippled through the study like thunder. This is embezzlement and fraud of the worst kind. Kathy's lips trembled soundlessly. Christina, too, her beautifully made-up face had gone ghostly white. The laughter and music from the party outside felt like it belonged to a different world. The truth was, I had already known. It began a month earlier, when I tried to confirm payment of my university enrollment fee. The trustee's office told me paperwork was being delayed because it required the custodian's approval, Kathy's approval. When I questioned her, she brushed me off with, I'm managing it. You don't need to worry. That was when the seed of suspicion took root in me. I turned to the only person I trusted completely, my grandmother Diane, and confided everything. She had listened quietly, then answered in a firm, reassuring tone. Wendy, don't worry about a thing. Attend your graduation with your head held high. I will take care of everything else. Those words had been my only comfort. And now, true to her promise, she had come to stand by me. The air in the study was taut, broken only by the shallow breathing of Kathy and Christina. And yet, the panic I had expected to see was nowhere on Kathy's face. After a brief flicker of shock, her face hardened into cold contempt. Oh, don't be so dramatic. She gave a derisive snort, as if someone had told her a bad joke. Ridiculous. This is a family matter. I am the head of this household, Wendy's legal guardian. I have every right to manage family assets for the benefit of the family and the company. This is not embezzlement, it's sound judgment. Her brazen denial left me speechless. She truly felt no guilt. That's right. Christina chimed in, emboldened by her mother, glaring at me with fury. You have no idea how hard it's been for us. Once my brand succeeds, I'll earn far more than enough to cover your tuition. And instead of supporting us, you bring in outsiders and betray your own family. How selfish can you be? Their twisted logic and naked hostility filled the room. But Attorney Harrison didn't so much as raise an eyebrow. He spoke his next words quietly, yet with merciless precision. Kathy, I understand you wish to frame this as a family matter. But the law does not. You have clearly violated your fiduciary duty as trustee. This is a grave breach of trust. He spread several more documents across the desk. Therefore, as of today, we are filing a petition with the court for an emergency asset freeze order. Ms. Christina Brown's business and personal accounts will be frozen. At the same time, your personal assets, the assets of the company you control, and this residence itself will be placed under provisional seizure. What? This time, Kathy was truly struck dumb. The wealth she had fought so desperately to secure for herself was collapsing like a castle of sand. Christina's face twisted with despair. If you do that, my business. It will collapse before it even opens. Attorney Harrison replied with calm detachment. That is the consequence of your own actions. And he cleared his throat before delivering the final notice. You are liable to return every misappropriated dollar, the funds diverted into Christina's business as well as the amounts siphoned to cover your company's deficits, together with punitive interest. That is our first demand. At the very moment Attorney Harrison laid out the civil demands, Kathy's expression transformed. Her head snapped up, her eyes burning with hatred as she glared at us. Don't be absurd. I only borrowed Wendy's funds temporarily. As her guardian, I have that right. Her defiance was the very arrogance she had always wielded against me. Christina, now sobbing, joined in with a shrill cry. That's right. Wendy's part of this family, of course she should help when the company is in trouble. And you bring in grandmother and a lawyer against us? How selfish can you be? Their shameless protests were nothing more than self-serving excuses. But Attorney Harrison had clearly anticipated them. He exhaled lightly, almost in weary dismissal, before answering in a voice cold as steel. I see. So you intend to justify your actions and refuse to resolve this civilly. Very well. Then we have no choice but to proceed to the next stage. At those words, both Kathy and Christina fell silent. Next stage? Yes. Attorney Harrison nodded, drawing another file from his briefcase. Until now, this has been a civil matter, about whether you would repay the money or not. But since you deny your wrongdoing and show no remorse, we will now initiate criminal proceedings. Criminal. The word struck them like a hammer, draining their faces of all remaining color. Embezzlement and fraud, these are not civil disputes but criminal offenses. Misusing your role as guardian makes this particularly egregious. A prison sentence is entirely possible. He paused before delivering the final blow. For weeks, we've compiled evidence of your misconduct and already consulted with the district attorney's office. The moment you refused our demands, everything was ready to be filed. Then, fixing his gaze firmly on Kathy and Christina, he declared with quiet finality. Arrests will follow once the prosecutor files charges. Even if you hire counsel and attempt to fight, the outcome will not change. At best, it will only prolong the time before your complete social ruin. There was no more room for excuses or resistance. Civil bankruptcy or criminal conviction, either way, the path before them was a dead end. Kathy's lips trembled as she collapsed back into her chair. Christina only whispered no. Staring into emptiness, her face hollow, her spirit seemingly drained away. Their resistance had only tightened the noose around their own necks. Finally, Christina turned toward me, her voice shaking, eyes pleading. Wendy. Please, stop this. We're sisters, aren't we? At that, the dam of emotions I had held back for 8 long years broke open. Sisters. You have no idea how alone I was in this house. Then I turned to Kathy. Kathy. You hijacked the company my father built with his life, ran it into the ground, and tried to pay for your failure with the last hope he left for me. You trampled on my hard work, my dreams, even my love for him. The words that spilled from me were the very blades they had hurled at me for years, now flying back to pierce their own hearts. A long, suffocating silence followed. It might have been minutes, but it felt eternal. At last, Kathy muttered in a faint, almost inaudible voice. If we accept your demands? Then the criminal complaint will be considered for withdrawal, Attorney Harrison replied, his voice utterly devoid of emotion. On the absolute condition that you sever all ties with Wendy from this moment on, and fulfill every term we've presented in good faith. And Christina's business? With the accounts frozen and assets seized, it will, of course, collapse. That is the outcome you brought upon yourselves. The attorney's words were as cold as ice, carrying not a shred of mercy. Slowly, Kathy lifted her face to look at me. Her eyes no longer held anger or hatred, only despair, with the faintest flicker of pleading. Perhaps, even at the very end, she had still hoped I might offer forgiveness. But inside me, all was quiet. The rage and resentment I had carried toward them seemed to have burned itself out after everything that had unfolded in these last hours. What remained was only a steady, unshakable resolve to reclaim my future and the precious gift my father Thomas had left me. I met her gaze directly and shook my head in silence. That was my final answer. I saw the last strength drain from her shoulders. Bowing her head, she whispered, her voice trembling, to Attorney Harrison. I understand. I'll accept all of your demands. Those words were her surrender. At that moment, Christina collapsed into sobs beside her. No. No. My brand. It's over. Her cries filled the quiet study, but no one reached out a hand. A wise decision, Attorney Harrison said evenly, sliding an agreement from his prepared stack of papers onto the desk. Then please sign here. We'll be in touch soon with the formal proceedings. With a hand trembling like a puppet's, Kathy scrawled her name. With that stroke of the pen, every ounce of power, wealth, and pride she had clung to was stripped away by law. When it was done, my grandmother Diane gently wrapped her arm around my shoulders and guided me toward the door. Wendy, let's go. It's over. We left the two of them, ashen-faced, hollow shells of themselves, and stepped out of the study. At the front door, the noise of the party and the cool night air washed over me. I drew in a deep, deep breath. It was my first breath of a new life, exhaling the air tainted by despair and betrayal, and inhaling the promise of the future. Grandmother. Thank you, I whispered through tears as we settled into the car. She clasped my hand firmly. No, Wendy. This future is one you won yourself. You refuse to bow to injustice. That strength is your greatest inheritance. And Thomas. He is surely proud of you from above. That night, for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. My university days passed in what felt like a blink. I graduated from Stanford University as valedictorian. Thanks to grandmother becoming trustee, my father's fund had been used solely for my education, just as he intended. At Stanford, I poured myself into computer science and AI, often studying until dawn. After graduation, I co-founded a small tech startup in Silicon Valley with a group of friends. The innovative software we developed quickly drew industry attention. Today, our company has grown larger and more influential than the one my father once ran. Diane remains my most trusted advisor and, as a board member, continues to guide me with her sharp business acumen. She is, without question, my one true family. As for Kathy, she relinquished all control of the company and the trust, as required. She lost more assets than she had ever stolen from me and was forced to sell the house. I hear she now lives quietly in a small suburban apartment. Christina's fashion brand, of course, collapsed under debt before it could ever open. For a time, she tried to frame herself in the media as a tragic young entrepreneur, but the looming scandal of the misappropriated funds silenced that attempt. Now, I'm told, she works as a sales clerk in a small boutique. I do not hate them anymore. But I have not forgiven them, either. They are no longer significant in my life. Their lives are theirs to live. My life is mine. That day was not an ending. It was a beginning. The beginning of a long journey, one where I was finally free from the chains of a false family and determined to prove my worth on my own terms.